Good evening and welcome into Tennessee Volunteers live on the Voice of College Football Network. I am Tucker Harlan alongside Jordan Binkley. We are happy to have you guys along with us tonight. If you like what you see, please like, share, and subscribe to Tennessee at the Voice of College Football. It helps us out. It helps you get closer to great content you enjoy as well. Again, happy to have you all with us. Hope that you guys had a terrific weekend. And as you can see, Jordan and I are once again with a very special guest tonight, our third guest that we've had on the program in the last month. He's a good friend of mine, great track runner, may or may not have done a radio show with this guy in the past. Some people refer to him as the fabulous one. I refer to him as the pride of Plano, Texas. Please welcome Rocky Top Insider's very own Rick Butler.
Wow. Hey, that was more of an introduction than I could have ever asked for. You know, I've got Monday Night Raw on the side right here. That sounded like an old Paul Heyman, a Gene Okerlund type introduction. So far too much, but I do appreciate you getting the hometown right. That was pretty perfect right off the bat. But no, it's great to be on with you guys. I'm a fan of the show as is. Tucker, you had mentioned it a second ago. You and I have been friends for a long time. And Jordan, we got connected here recently and heard nothing but great things. So it is a privilege to be on with you guys today and talking a little bit of Tennessee football with things unfolding right around the corner with just media days now in the rearview mirror, fall camp on the horizon. It's starting to get that time of the year again where you feel a little bit of an itch and you start to get going. So thanks for having me on. Excited to hang out with you guys for a bit.
Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Yeah, so we are really getting toward that time of year now. Fall camp, as you mentioned, is on the way here in a little over a week now. We're a little less than a week removed from SEC Media Days. And you were down there at the College Football Hall of Fame last week at SEC Media Days covering it for Rocky Top Insider with your recent acquisition, Ryan Sylvia. Shout out to you guys for acquiring him. 5-star in the Tennessee football or Tennessee media transfer portal, I should say, but big pickup by you guys. So I think the biggest thing that was asked of Josh Heupel down there just by the media naturally was the quarterback situation. And I think for those of us who are not around Josh Heupel all the time, they were a little bit surprised to hear him say this is an open competition and Joey Aguilar has not won the job just yet. Rick, you and I have been around Josh Heupel enough to know that maybe there's some truth to that, but it's also kind of likely that Heupel is just playing his cards close to the table, and in reality, maybe he has a guy in mind. Which do you think it is?
Yeah, you know, you said it was the biggest question. It was not only that, but it was the very first question asked. And Josh Heupel, he's not being coy about it, or he's not being shy about it. I think he is openly welcoming this quarterback battle, not only from the fan base and what people are going to say and how people are going to talk about it, but also just as a message to the players that, you know, hey, look, we're going into this fall camp, and while it might not have been a position that they expected to be in, I think he wants to rally the players and the other players in the offense, or just that quarterback room alone, and say, hey, when you get out there day one of camp, go as hard as you can and go as fast as you can, because he wants that battle. He wants that competition. You go back to Josh Heupel's first year when he was here, it was Joe Milton, it was Hendon Hooker, and they battled it out, right? And obviously we got to a place by week one in that first season, but I think that he enjoys that competition. So I get the sense that he might have kind of an idea. Obviously, Jake Merklinger is a player that he's watched, he's seen, he's coached for a year now, maybe not in the starting offensive sort of role, or maybe obviously not with the first team starters, but I think he sees what he's got there. And I think that he's got a good impression of maybe what that sort of might mature into here in his second year with the program. But then Joey Aguilar is also a wild card. And so I think that any coach on that staff, whether it's Josh Heupel, Joey Halsley, or even maybe some of us in the media, we can kind of speculate on what we see here, or what we see there. We can all look at ESPN and see the stat charts, but until they get out on the field, I think that's when questions start to really be answered. So I do believe him when he goes into this, just kind of welcoming that quarterback battle. But again, he's not being shy about it. He's not playing coy. He's being open and honest, not only with the media, but I think it's also a message to the team that, hey, when you get out there on day one, nobody's job is safe. There is a job to earn, and someone's going to go out there and earn it.
Yeah, and I think I agree with you on the Joey Aguilar thing. Just in SEC football, like you're just not going to know it until you see it in this
Right.
system. But I do have a little bit of a follow up on that note because we did have your coworker Ryan Shumpert on about a month ago, talking preseason expectations for this Tennessee football team, and he mentioned that Jake Merklinger may be the best fit among the quarterbacks to the offense. Do you think there is some truth to that, and that you may potentially see Jake Merklinger get some reps early on in the season, a lot of reps, along with Joey Aguilar?
Yeah, I'll kind of start working backwards there. I don't think whoever steps out onto the field week one against Syracuse and Atlanta, it is a definitive, bona fide starting role that's going to carry throughout the whole season. I don't think that Josh Heupel would be afraid to kind of mix and match a little bit. And I know you have Georgia week 3, and that's going to be a huge game, but I think you do have got a little bit of time. Now, we'll see how Tennessee does against Syracuse, and certainly if they can build a lead, then maybe they can experiment a little bit more. But I don't think the guy who starts the game on week 1 is the definitive starter. He might be. You never know, though. I think you could see multiple different things. As far as Jake Merklinger goes, I'm not going to count him out of this competition. Now, when I've been talking about this competition, I sort of have left out George McIntyre out of my conversations. That's not any disrespect to George, but I think just in terms of being concise, about this conversation, yeah, to me it is between Joey Aguilar and Jake Merklinger. The thing about last year, though, when he was a true freshman on the team, his first year in Knoxville, there was so much conversation around what Nico Iamaleava was going to do in his first year in the system, and everybody's eyes were locked on him. We obviously had a little bit of wondering eyes, at least myself, but if I'm going to be honest, it was mainly on Nico. So I think that Jake Merklinger was a highly touted quarterback. I think he does have the skills that you would like to see in a Josh Heupel offense, and we'll see how those kind of manifest as soon as he gets more chances to be that. But I still think it's just hard to say. So I'm not counting Jake Merklinger out. I think that he's got some traits, and maybe there's some things that work against Joey Aguilar or that we could maybe foresee working against. And again, that's just because we have more stats on him. We know that Joey Aguilar can turn the ball over a little bit. Well, we also know that's something that Josh Heupel wants to stay away from at all costs because of the way that offense runs and because of the fact that you can't be wasting those possessions or else your defense will tire out a good bit. So maybe that's something that hurts Joey Aguilar in the long run. Maybe it's not something that manifests. But I think with Jake Merklinger, there's just been so little of what we've seen. I think only 48 passing yards to his name last year. That's going to be one of the big things I look at. So I think that Jake Merklinger could be in a good position to start. I think that Joey Aguilar could be in a good position. There's just so many things that we don't know until we start seeing them on the field. But at least between those two guys, I'm not counting either one of them out yet because I think they both have some things that they can prove if they do get that starting opportunity. But I think they both might have a couple of, I don't know, what's the word? Setbacks isn't the right word, but just a couple of things to grow in and things to work on that could sort of stunt their growth a little bit or just kind of stunt that progress here early on to the season. So I think that Jake Merklinger is an extremely talented quarterback. I know that Joey Aguilar, is the more talked about name just because of the arrival and because of the transfer and because he does have stats that you can go and look at. I believe it's over, 6,700 passing yards in 2 seasons, something like that. That's a lot easier to look at than just what Jake Merklinger did in a very, very short amount of time last year. But I'm not counting out Merklinger in this race, not just yet.
Well, with the SEC media days and everything, I've seen a lot of the players that were there. They were speaking highly of Joey Aguilar and everything. And I think Miles Kitselman was saying that he's kind of like played a little bit of a mentor role to the other two quarterbacks. And everything they said has been great about his personality. Do you think that he's like won over the locker room a little bit? Do you think that could be a problem in the future?
No, not necessarily. And again, you're right. We've only talked to one offensive player about this. There's going to be a lot more of those questions asked coming up next week and the week after when Tennessee starts getting in front of the media. But the way that Miles Kitselman talked about it was, hey, I've only known the guy for a little bit of time now. And he's already a guy that's going to be invited to my wedding next summer. So I think that does tell you a little bit about what he has really tried to do here in this first little bit of time with Tennessee. And that's also the reports that we've been hearing, right? The fact that he's put his nose down, he's gotten to work, and he's not dealing with social media. He's not dealing with kind of the pompous side of things. He just wants to go out there, be a good teammate, and work as hard as he can to earn that starting job. So that's going to be a big part of it too. I mean, obviously, I don't need to tell you guys, but it's SEC football. It's not backyard football. You do have to earn the trust of the 11 guys that are around you in the huddle. And then the next couple guys who are on the depth chart as well, the guys who are going to be rotating in. You can be a great quarterback, but if you don't have the trust of your teammates, it's not going to go as far as it could. It's not going to hit the ceiling that it could. So I think that Joey Aguilar, for not being here for a long time, for missing out on something as critical as spring camp, I think he is doing everything in his power sort of in this off the field time. And I say off the field, I know they can still do a couple of workouts on their own from a player's perspective, but in this non-fall camp sort of stage of the summer, I think he's doing everything he possibly can to get acclimated with those teammates, to earn their trust. But again, like you had alluded to a second ago, it's only from one offensive player so far. But Miles Kitselman was raving about him, and as highly as you could kind of talk about someone that you haven't known for that long. And we do got to throw out the caveat as well that it's SEC Media Day, so you're going to be saying a lot of nice things. But Miles Kitselman does seem like a very stand-up individual. He does seem like a very genuine figure. So when he would say those things, when he would kind of relay those stories, it didn't really sound like something that was just being made up on the spot. It sounded like that was coming from true experience. So I think Joey Aguilar is in a good position to win over those teammates. And I know that Jake Merklinger wants to do the same as well, having known those guys for a little bit longer. So that was one of those things. And the other good thing that you hear about that, and I think if you're a Tennessee fan, you're certainly taking a little bit of optimism from, was that they said that both of those guys are doing everything they can to be vocal leaders, right? And we haven't hit a fall camp huddle yet. We haven't hit the dog days of summer where you're working outside and you're in full pads. But if those guys are already becoming vocal leaders now, and that's something that Miles Kitselman did allude to, that at times in hard stretches last year just was not as prevalent as you would like, then that's something to me is something that you can buy into, something that you can be really optimistic towards.
Yeah, I think all those things you mentioned are important, Rick, just winning over the locker room as a quarterback. And you're right with Nico, and you could tell when he was in front of media, just not a super vocal presence. And I mean, that's not to say it's a bad trait necessarily, because like Hendon Hooker, for example, was a little bit of a softer spoken guy. Maybe not as soft spoken as Nico, but you did at least have somebody like a Dylan Sampson in there to kind of try and rally the troops, because it really did feel like it was his offense last year. And other thing too about Joey Aguilar, and this could mean nothing, but he's doing things in the community as well. And I think that is something that can help win over some fans, get them on your side a little bit. And I think that's something that goes a long way with people and making connections with them. Although we have seen quarterbacks do that here in the past, and they haven't panned out nearly as well as Tennessee fans would have liked them to. But it is a good first impression to make in front of Vol Nation when you've only been here a couple of months. On the note of SEC Media Days, Rick, anything else that really jumped out to you from Tennessee's day down there last week?
Well, as you guys know, it can be a little bit like Groundhog Day sometimes with SEC Media Days, not only from the team that goes before you and the team that goes after you, but just on a year-to-year basis. You're going to hear a lot of optimism. You're going to hear a lot of sunshine about the team and about where they're at. But one thing that was notable is that Josh Heupel did not necessarily come out. You know, when it comes to injuries, especially during season, Josh Heupel does play coy on that. We talked about him not doing that with the quarterback battle, but he does do that about injuries during the season. I thought he was fairly honest and upfront about what he had to say about Jermon McCoy and where he's at. He did say this quote, "I think with the injury and his rehab process, it's how he encounters the next phase and the next stage as he continues to prepare himself and get ready to play. I saw him the other day, and he is going through his rehab. He looks really good. His moving skills are good." A little bit more after that, but he does end with, "Keep in mind, obviously, we want him. He's a huge part of us defensively, but his short-term and his long-term health as well." So it sounds like me that, hey, you might not get Jermon McCoy for maybe a small extended stretch during the start of this season. And again, we'll certainly get hopefully more answers to that as the next month unfolds. But Josh Heupel was upfront and honest in saying, yeah, he's still going through that rehab process. And to me, it didn't necessarily sound like, hey, he is, kind of closing down that rehab process. And again, not that that's something that Josh Heupel has necessarily said or this expectation that he would say that, but it didn't really necessarily sound like he was closing down that rehab process. It sounds like he was still going through it. So I don't think there's a big long-term concern about Jermon McCoy. Will he play first week one? I don't know. If I was a betting man, I'd probably bet against it. I don't know any insider information there or anything. Just going about what Josh Heupel said. But he did openly and honestly say that he is going through the rehab process right now. So Jermon McCoy, obviously being one of, if not the best player on Tennessee's team and a future first-round draft pick, as long as the health kind of journey continues to recover, he's going to be a big piece. But maybe you don't need him for those first 3 games or so. I know Georgia is that third week. I don't know about you guys. I don't necessarily expect Jermon McCoy to be the difference between a win and a loss. Now we might think something different here in a couple weeks. But maybe he kind of sits those first couple weeks and then jumps back into the fold once you start ramping up the SEC season a little bit more. So again, that's speculation on my end of things. But Josh Heupel did say that Jermon McCoy in the rehab process, which is important to note, as again, he is probably Tennessee's best player heading into the 2025 season.
Well, I saw that Arian Carter spoke highly of Colton Hood and the way that he's performed at practice and everything. What's your expectations from him for the season?
I'd be really excited about Colton Hood. Just coming from the place where he was at with Colorado, being led by Deion Sanders there. I think the SEC, playing in the SEC and playing at Tennessee, just gives him a little bit new freshness to his game, a little bit of a different perspective on what he's doing in and out. I like where Tennessee's 4 cornerbacks are. And again, that's putting a healthy Jermon McCoy back into the fold at some point later in the season. But if you give me, who would it be? Jalen McMurray and Colton Hood, maybe as those 2 guys who are rotating in. Maybe Colton Hood even kind of bumps back to the secondary if at any point you need him, or excuse me, the safeties room, maybe a star position, in case you do need him there at some point. I think Colton Hood is just a very versatile piece. He's one of the players and one of the transfers that I'm really excited about to see. Obviously, Tennessee doesn't have a laundry list of transfers to go through. We know that the 2 guys from the offensive line, they're going to be linemen, right? Not necessarily the most intriguing pieces to watch during fall camp. We know that Stark Thomas is going to be one of those intriguing pieces, but Colton Hood especially is going to be one of those players I'm excited to see how he rolls in. And again, if you're missing Jermon McCoy for the first little stretch of time, he strikes me as somebody who can come in, who can step into a starting cornerback role potentially there, and maybe don't lose too much of a beat. Again, I'm not comparing anybody in the team to Jermon McCoy, and obviously Ricky Gibson is an exceptional talent himself, but I think that Colton Hood can kind of keep you going in the right direction, not only until Jermon McCoy gets back, but just until, but once that does happen, then start to move into a rotational piece along with Jalen McMurray, who is still coming along in his own journey at that, and be a nice little 4-person quartet, if you will, for that Tennessee cornerback room. But I'm not counting out Colton Hood's ability to be versatile in that secondary as well, maybe even something besides cornerback if they need it.
Yeah, and I saw a video a couple weeks ago with Jermon McCoy. I think he was at a camp or something. It looked like he was moving around all right. But that is something we talked a little bit about with Brian Shumpert. It could be like the Cooper Mays situation back in 2023 where you got a guy who undergoes a procedure and is close to healthy, but you're just not quite sure yet. So you want to take some precautionary measures and keep him out for just a little bit. And I'm with you too, Rick. I don't think he's a huge difference between a win and a loss in those first couple weeks. And I mean, it's going to be a while before I think we can even say that, just because I look around at the SEC quarterbacks this season, and I feel like at least until you get to Florida in November, maybe Oklahoma, there's not anybody that's really jumping out at me at quarterback. And I think that's something that you can kind of take comfort in with this defense a little bit. And I noticed it last season too, honestly. Like, you just didn't have very many good quarterbacks across the league, I didn't feel like.
Yeah, no, I'm with you as well. And so to me, it's not that there is a giant need to rush him back into things, because if you also look at Tennessee's schedule, which is fairly manageable for an SEC season, I think it'll probably be a little bit tougher next year. But a lot of those, Tennessee's schedule to me is sort of back heavy. And again, you have a Kentucky there, which I think you can work with. Kentucky's quarterback situation doesn't necessarily jump off the page to you. Neither does Vanderbilt, sort of a little bit more, Diego Pavia, but Tennessee sort of contained him enough to make life extremely difficult for him last year. But that is, like you had alluded to, you start getting into a little bit more of that top tier competition at the quarterback room. And again, while it might not be too striking, certainly other teams are going to have a bit more competition from that spot throughout the year. I just think that you can play it safe throughout those first few weeks. And I do think that people will be clamoring for maybe to see Jermon McCoy for that Georgia game. But to me, again, I just don't necessarily know if he's the difference between a win and a loss there. Things could maybe change in a couple weeks. But I think you give him the time to rest, time to recover, bring him back for sort of the middle-ish part of the season, somewhere in there whenever you want. And that's when you do start seeing that elevation in those quarterbacks. Plus, they're also talking about a guy who's got a lot more future football to play at the next level. And I think, as desperately as he wants to get back on the field, because all reports say that he does, I'm sure his health, certainly is a priority at this stage as well. So I think Jermon McCoy is someone to look at, but, from all indications that we got in spring camp as well, he's been in the building. He's been coaching up his teammates. He's been working hard. He has not necessarily left those guys on an island. He's been around, and he's been a great teammate through all of that, which, hey, when you're also going to be a first-round draft pick potentially here in a couple months, that's also something that teams are going to be looking at. So Jermon McCoy, certainly an interesting piece to be talking about here with fall camp starting next month.
Viewer question from our comments here. Does Tennessee's Arion Carter or Jeremiah Telander take the leadership role on a very deep defense? I personally would go with option A. What about you, Rick?
Yeah, two good options right there, because you're not necessarily talking as those two guys as the younger side of things anymore. They're now growing into third-year players who have a ton of experience on this defense and with this team. Arion Carter does strike me as, the quarterback of the defense in a way. Being that guy in the middle of the field, being able to know everything going on around you. That's been one of the things that has been complimented about him the most, is not only his ability to know what he needs to do and what his position needs to do, but understanding what everybody needs to do around him. That strikes me as being the quarterback of the defense. But Jeremiah Telander is, I think, that a guy that, not to say that Arion Carter is not this, but he strikes me as a guy that people will go to war with, that people will rally around. If you see Jeremiah Telander going in there and getting his jersey dirty in the middle of the pile when a guy's running the ball or when a quarterback's trying to escape the pocket, I think he's a guy that gives a lot of fuel and momentum to the defense. So if you're asking me, I think Arion Carter, he might continue to elevate into that leadership role. He was Tennessee's leading tackler last year. It's hard to say that a guy who was the leading tackler could have a breakout season, but I kind of think that's where we're at. Like, I think he could take that next level, even above what he did last year. But then Jeremiah Telander, again, just a guy that you'd want to go to war with, a guy that you probably want to have in the trenches with you, at least from everything we've heard. So in leadership in different ways, but I do think that Arion Carter is going to kind of have the role of that quarterback of the defense in the middle of the field.
Well, speaking of the leadership, I don't know if y'all saw this quote, but Bryson Eason was asked about Arion Carter, and he was saying that everyone listens whenever Arion Carter speaks. He was comparing him to Ray Lewis, as a motivational speaker. And I mean, I feel like that could be pretty important for Tennessee this season. Especially, they had the number 6 defense last year, but you hope that Tennessee ends up keeping up that success going into next season. So, me personally, I think that Arion Carter, seemingly from what everyone said, seems to be a pretty good leader for Tennessee.
Did you guys hear that story about William Inge and Arion Carter from, I believe it was training camp last year before the 2024 season, but it might have been going on during the season, about him staying late at the facility? Did you guys ever hear that one?
Mm-mm.
I don't think so.
It's a pretty good story that I can't remember who told. I think it was William Inge, so I think it was probably during the preseason. But apparently there was a time where just on a random weeknight, and I say random, it was probably during camp, so guys are around the facility as is, but it was late one night, maybe approaching midnight, maybe even past midnight, and William Inge is one of the last guys to leave the facility. He walks out of the facility, and all of a sudden, one of the last cars in the parking lot is Arion Carter's. So he's his immediate thought is, hey, I wonder if something happened. I wonder if everything's okay. I need to call him to check on him. He dials up the phone and calls Arion Carter and says something to the extent of, hey, your car is pretty much the last in the parking lot. Are you okay? Is something going on? And Arion Carter said, yeah, coach, everything's good. I'm just still in the film room. And I think when you have a guy like that who's that dedicated, who not only his coaches see it, but his teammates see it as well. Maybe they don't necessarily see it if he's the last guy in the room, but you get that understanding of what he's doing to better this program. That to me, I think speaks volumes. And again, that translated into a season where he led the team in tackling. So Arion Carter, to me, if I was on that Tennessee football team, seeing the kind of work that guy was putting in, seeing him stay until all hours of the night, past midnight, maybe even, then that's a guy that I would certainly trust and listen to. And when you're talking about that linebacker room for Tennessee, William Inge's style is He wants to have player-led leadership. That's something he's talked about since day one of getting here. He's not just kind of preaching in that position room. He's letting other guys stand up and breaking down what they see from not only, their own team on the field and their own position group, but also from what the other team is trying to do. There's a lot of player-led leadership, and that's why it kind of brings me back to, is it Arion Carter or Jeremiah Telander? I would say Carter probably, but I think that room is oozing with leadership. And you've also seen that kind of success translate to the recruiting trail so far, and kind of why guys want to come in and play for William Inge, because he does give that freedom and that flexibility for a guy to stand up and kind of carve out his own path. And so I think those are two good options. But, imagine that. I stay until about, midnight, 1 a.m, just getting a call from your coach. I'm still here, coach. Everything's fine. So I think that speaks to who he is.
Yeah, and I'm with you, Rick. I think either one of those guys could emerge, because Telander, I mean, who doesn't want to go to war with a tackling machine that his white jersey is turning brown by the end of the game?
Right.
Why would you not want to have that guy as a leader on your team? And I do agree with you too about that, potentially getting Tennessee more high-profile recruits at linebacker than in the past, because we've mentioned it just as Tennessee has begun to bring in more recruits here in the last few weeks. But Tennessee is getting more and more of them than we're accustomed to seeing than they have at the beginning of the Josh Heupel era. And it was not necessarily a laughingstock position in a way that the corners were, say, the first couple of years of the Heupel era, but it certainly was not a deep position group either.
Yeah, and you're talking about the linebackers, that is, right?
Yeah.
What? And no disrespect to Brian Jean-Marie or anything like that, but I think that when William Inge came in, he gave Tennessee something that they didn't necessarily have, and that was someone with such a high pedigree coming off of that trip to the national championship game with Washington. When you do that, that's not only something that you can speak to recruits and recruits listen to, but you're also getting players capable of playing in an environment like that, playing in a playoff and winning a game there. It's been really impressive what Tennessee's been able to do. And then you're right. You look at the recruiting trail with the guys who are not only sort of about to make their fall debut for Tennessee, Jaden Harmon, Christian Gass, some of these guys who I sit here and I get excited for the future about Tennessee football, thinking about Braden Rouse and TJ White. Well, man, there's still a bunch of guys who are coming in before them who you've sort of, I don't want to say forgotten about, but in some ways, how can you forget about them if you don't know them yet? They've only been here for a spring. I think the Tennessee fan base is going to really start to sink their teeth into what sort of room or what sort of group that room could turn into. And over these next couple of years, I think you're really going to see that room start to build up with really talented players and a different variety of players, not only guys who can go sideline to sideline and be a little bit quicker on their feet, kind of drop cover and things like that a little bit more, but also some guys who are a little bit bigger, who are a little bit thicker, who can go and attack the line of scrimmage, who can go and fill a hole when a running back is coming through, or can chase down a quarterback who's trying to escape the pocket. I think that room is about to get really good. And again, I give a lot of the credit to William Inge and what he's able to do. He is my favorite assistant coach that we have to talk to, because he's just an old soul. He's funny with how he talks. He tries to make jokes, and he makes a couple of jokes that makes himself laugh harder than anybody else in the room, which I think is a very endearing quality, and nothing bad about that, but it just kind of shows how comfortable he is in his own skin talking to these players. You hear him in this very lighthearted, very upbeat manner when you're talking to him in the media. And I think that very much translates over to the meeting rooms and what they want to do there. But then you get out on the field and he looks like a seasoned veteran. Hey, I'll get up in your face. I'll get you where you need to be kind of coach. And Arion Carter talked about that last week at SEC Media Days. He said, look, he's just a coach who truly wants you to be better than you ever thought you could be. He wants you to be the best player that he's ever coached. And I think that is something that not only resonates with these guys, but means a lot to these guys. So then again, to get back to the beginning of the question, you talk about how that translates to the recruiting trail. And I think that players, so we're always going to be talking about NIL and things like that from now on, but let's kind of cut that part out of it. Just when you're talking about, hey, I want to grow in my position with this team, I think that guys understand that relatability with William Inge and mainly just that genuineness and that selflessness. that he gets to bring to the table. So I think that he's probably an extremely fun guy to be around. I always enjoy our 8 to 10 minutes with him in the media every once in a while when we do get him. But again, the biggest thing that I can say about him is it just seems very genuine. And I think that's what translates to these players, whether it's the current crop that's in the room right now or the recruits that Tennessee is trying to bring in on the recruiting trail. And by the way, going back to T-Lander, I don't know if you guys are going to get this reference, but I was trying to think of it that whole time. T-Lander reminds me of I think it was Danny Bates from The Replacements. Just a psychotic kind of linebacker who's ready to run through a brick wall. So I don't know if you guys have seen that movie. I think some people out in the audience probably have. The best football movie that I've seen, Danny Bates, or maybe it was Bateman. I can't remember. But just an absolute animal on the field. So if you haven't seen that movie, go maybe YouTube a couple clips. If not, just watch the whole thing. It's a Keanu Reeves special, I should say.
Well, phenomenal movie, and I heard that it was loosely. I heard it was loosely based off of Tony Robinson too, and like what went on with the actual lockouts with the NFL.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's kind of the story that I've heard over time too, and if that is, that's pretty cool to have a nice little Tennessee connection to that. But I think they had to draw inspiration from somewhere, and it's a pretty good place to draw some inspiration from is when it happened in real life.
Well, Rick, unfortunately, I'm on record as not being a movie watcher, but I can tell you that Tennessee has had a crazy linebacker named Bates in the past.
That's right.
Unfortunately, he may or may not have been run over by Herschel Walker, but we don't talk about that here.
No, we don't.
He was a cowboy too, right? He was a Dallas Cowboy. I got my helmet right there. So go Cowboys.
So you mentioned recruiting a couple times when talking about the linebackers, and that's one thing I did want to ask you a little bit about because really for the last 3 weeks, Jordan and I have opened the show just talking about the 4 recruits Tennessee landed. That is not the case this week. Tennessee has actually not gotten anybody. There was a chance they might have gotten or could have gotten one on Wednesday, but Kamari Blair ultimately committed to South Carolina. Right. That was the last place he visited before making his decision. I don't know how much of an impact that really had. But just looking on the horizon, there are some guys who have expressed interest in Tennessee, but have not seen any commitment dates from any of them. A couple 5-stars are in the mix. Darius Gray, the interior offensive lineman. Then, of course, Savion Hyder, the running back. On 3 keeps saying it's Tennessee and Michigan there. But Savion has also debunked On 3 in the past, so you never know. Anybody that stands out to you right now that Tennessee could potentially land here in the next month before football season?
Yeah, I think so far, a lot of what Tennessee's summer recruiting surge, was doing was bolstering the depth in the class. And you might have some people that are upset that Tennessee had maybe one too many 3-stars or didn't pick up enough 4-stars. I don't necessarily buy stock into that because I think that first off, they did get a lot of, a good bit of the 4-stars that they were looking about. We just talked about 2 linebackers that were right there. Zay Anderson was recently just bumped up to a 4-star. You're going to see a little bit more movement with those rankings, I believe, until they hit National Signing Day. But they're also players that Tennessee likes. And I think that's the most important thing because the 3 of us can sit there and we can look at 247 Sports or Rivals or whatever it is, and we can look through the star ratings and we can kind of get an idea on that. But Josh Heupel and Tim Banks and Joey Halsley, those are the guys who are looking about what skill sets can translate over to what we want to do on the field. And I think that's not bad. Now, sitting top 15 right now, I believe it was I believe Tennessee was number 13 last time I checked 247's rankings, and that was maybe a couple of days ago. I think they'd like to see that higher, and there's still a couple of chances to do that. We're talking about some of the big fish that are left. Again, Tennessee bolstered, in my opinion, a good bit of that depth with that summer recruiting surge. But now it's some of those big fish left. You just talked about the offensive lineman. You just talked about Savion Hyder, the running back. And then I think people are still talking about Tristan Keys out there, kind of, playing the fence with some of these teams. And will he stay at LSU? Will he look at Tennessee? Will he look at some of these others? We know that a lot of Tennessee's current commitments right now are trying to really talk to him and bring him in. I think you're just looking at some of those big fish left. And I believe Tennessee's at 21 recruits right now. So the class is winding down. Maybe they're just kind of saving a little bit of room to see if they can land any of those big fish. But I think the surge did a lot. over the summer to give you a lot of what you wanted, and you might have missed some of it, right? It feels like some of it might have been so compacted together that it almost kind of just some news washes over the other. But I do think that Tennessee's got a good class right now. I think they would love to get that into the top 10 by the time that the cycle's over. But again, the only way that they can kind of do that right now is by landing one or two of those big fish that are left out there. So I really look at Darius Gray, the offensive lineman, as somebody who could be a cornerstone piece to the class. We know what David Sanders Jr. was to the previous class. We know what David Sanders Jr. is going to potentially do as a true freshman this year, potentially at the right tackle position. If they're going to keep Lance Hurd at the left tackle spot, then you're putting a true freshman on the line right there. But he is that good that I think that he can step into that role with the right coaching. Offensive line, I think, is just so unbelievably important. Don't get me wrong. I would, man, I just as a football fan, I'd kill to see what Savion Hyder could do in this offense, especially if you got him working with it, maybe a Faison Brandon or someone down the road like the quarterback who's trying to recruit him right now. But you need to shore up those trenches to be able to do anything. So I think that Tennessee is going to try to take their swings at some of these last big guys. But I think that summer recruiting surge gave Tennessee a lot of the, I don't want to say filler pieces that might not come off the right way, but just sort of to fill the class up with who they need. A lot of those filler pieces came in a very short amount of time. And we're going to be spending plenty of time going over these next couple months, sort of backtracking and looking at what actually each one of them brings to the table. And I think by the time that we get to National Signing Day, people are going to feel pretty comfortable with the different talent that Tennessee is bringing in, especially when you're headlining the class with a guy like Faison Brandon.
All right, so I have just a couple more questions for you, Rick, and then we'll let you run. You've been great with us as our third guest ever on the program, and one of them is actually in the comments here from Mike 3883. What is your official Tennessee football record prediction for this year?
Oh wow! Oh man! Boy, without seeing much yet on the field and without knowing which quarterback's going to start, I know it's not the sexiest pick. I know no one's going to be writing headlines about this. Rick Butler predicted 11-1. Rick Butler predicted 6-6. No one's going to be doing that. But I kind of keep it at the baseline 8-4 right now, depending on who Tennessee's starter is. I would not hesitate kind of bumping that up to 9-3. And that's not even to kind of, I don't know, that's not to disrespect those quarterbacks too much. But to me, I've gotten burned by my Tennessee predictions a couple times in the past couple years when we've known who the starter was. And so this time around, I think that before we know who it's going to be, I just want to be a little bit more conservative. So I have 8-4 going into training camp, but that's without a quarterback. So depending on how they look, depending on who it is, depending on what we hear over the next month, and then what we see really in Atlanta against Syracuse, I will have no problem bumping that up and saying, hey, one of those kind of maybe extra losses that I feel like could come here or there, maybe that gets bumped up to, hey, I feel pretty confident now that Tennessee's got the right guy in place. I don't have a lot of concerns about the defense based on who they're bringing back. Again, we've talked about the secondary a little bit. We've talked about the linebackers a little bit. We have not talked about the defensive line, but it's a Tennessee defensive line under Ronnie Gardner. I think it's going to be pretty good. Yeah, it's pretty veteran. When you have Tyree West, who is maybe my pick for the breakout player of the whole Tennessee team. You've got a guy like Joshua Josephs, who man, I think is ready to emerge in his own spotlight, not necessarily in the shadow of James Pierce Jr. He had a higher PFF grade than James Pierce Jr. last year. Even with other teams saying, hey, this is going to be Tennessee's guy, I still think he's got the power to get through that. And then, of course, you got guys like Bryson Eason, veterans on that line. I don't have a lot of concerns about the defense. So then again, it just kind of turns to the offense. What sort of extra juice can that quarterback room get you? How do those receivers work on the table? Does a Braylon Staley, kind of emerge into somebody who can be a threat in these SEC games? When you have Oklahoma at home, when you're going on the road to Florida, can he be a guy who maybe is working from the slot, who can get open in the third quarter or potentially in the fourth quarter and give you an impactful, couple of impactful plays here and there? Those are some of the things that separates me right now from my predictions between 8-4, 9-3. So I'm going a little bit conservative right now, 8-4. But again, I won't hesitate to bump that up to a 9-3 based on sort of what we see over this camp and what things look like going into the season. Well, what about you guys? Where are you guys sitting with that question?
Jordan?
Well, I mean, Honestly, I feel like Tennessee is going to, I guess for a lack of better terms, get lucky in one of the big 3 games. I don't know which one they're going to be, but I don't know. I have a good feeling about Alabama this season. Just for some
Okay.
reason, I don't know what it is. I feel like Tennessee's been in Alabama's head as of late. You know, like winning the past two out of the past 3 games. Um, I kind of like Tennessee in there. I mean, I know they got a new quarterback, Ty Simpson. I know he was previously recruited by Tennessee at some point. I mean, he sat there on the depth chart for a while. Not sure how he'll end up being as a full-time starter, but I mean, I just feel like Tennessee's starting to change things around in that department. I'm worried about Florida quite a bit. That's the game that I'm most concerned about this season because, you know, Florida's had that mental edge on Tennessee all the way back since Spurrier was there. So, I mean, and playing in the swamp, I think the last time Tennessee won in the swamp was 2001, I'm pretty
3.
sure. 2003. Yeah. So it's been quite some time since Tennessee's been able to get a win there, but who knows? Maybe they changed the trend this season. I guess we'll have to wait and see. And I feel like a lot of that's going to do with the questions that Tennessee still has on offense with the quarterback, like replacing Dylan Sampson, everything like that. But with that being said, I mean, I feel like Tennessee probably goes 9-3. That'd probably be my official prediction, with 8-4 being the floor, and I think 10-2 being the ceiling.
Yeah, with that Florida game especially, and sorry to just jump right
good.
in, but I'm with you there, right? What is also, but that with that game, like, what does Florida look like at the end of that season? Because they've got a miserable schedule that Tennessee doesn't necessarily have. Yes, that game's going to be in the swamp, but are they going to be beat up by the end of the season? Or is DJ Lagway going to kind of polish himself into one of the SEC's best quarterbacks by the end of the season? I think that's a big question mark. To me, I do look at those 3, the Georgia, Alabama, and Florida, as, without knowing what your quarterback's going to look like, I sort of chalk those up to losses. It's going to be hard to go into the swamp and win. And then that Oklahoma game, to me, is that 4th toss-up. And again, Oklahoma is a polarizing preseason team. I think there's some people you could go and ask, and they say, I don't have any faith to turn things around. I think there's other people you could go and ask and say, hey, this Mateer kid from Washington State is the real deal. He might be able to win them some extra games. But with that game being at home for Tennessee, that should give Tennessee the edge right off the bat. So I think if Tennessee can have a quarterback and you know, be able to kind of have the offense, maybe not steamrolling things, but at least have the offense humming by the time that the Sooners roll into town, then I think that Tennessee's going to have a great chance to win that game. But there's just a couple question marks out there on the table right now. But I like what you said.
So I'm with Jordan on the 9-3. I'm not with him on the getting one of the big 3, though. I think the big 3 right now I'm chalking up as losses for Tennessee, especially with 2 of them on the road, and with that Georgia game being so early in the season. I think that's a game that Tennessee doesn't get blown out in, but I don't think Tennessee wins it either. Could be kind of an ugly game from both sides there that Georgia ends up winning in Neyland Stadium. But Rick, I don't think 8-4 should be looked at as a disappointment, just given everything that's gone on. And you knew the ceiling was going to drop regardless, with or without Nico on this team. So I don't really think there's anything wrong with that prediction. Although I will say 2 of Tennessee's 4 home losses in the Josh Heupel era are to Georgia, and you haven't seen another one since that infamous Ole Miss game in 2021 that isn't Georgia. So I do like to keep that in the back of my mind. And also, he is going to be motivated to beat Oklahoma. He will always be motivated to beat Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Just because it's one of those situations where it's like, you know, he likes a lot of people out there, but, you know, bad boss ruined the experience for him, essentially was the problem there.
Yeah, and don't let Arkansas turn into a trap game in your own backyard. You know,
you can't let that happen.
No,
I do think that Taylon Green is an underrated quarterback, and I know that Tennessee sort of got him on the injury side of things last year. I think that he's an underrated quarterback. I think that he is a good ball player, but Tennessee should be the better team with the better defense, especially during that game. And again, it's in your own backyard. Do not let that be a trap game. Don't let that game factor into the equation of 3 losses, 4 losses, whatever it might be. Handle your business there. Handle your business against Kentucky. Handle your business against Vanderbilt. And then go out there and play some football against Oklahoma and see if you can get one of those swing games to go in your favor. That's kind of the way that I've been looking at the schedule so far.
All right, Rick, one last thing, and then we will let you run.
Bring it.
So you mentioned a few minutes ago, and I mentioned it at the beginning of the show, that you're from Dallas, so you were a Dallas Cowboys fan. And there's a certain quarterback that we all know from Tennessee pretty recently that is now a part of the Cowboys organization. Should Dak Prescott go down with an injury for, say, I'm not saying it'll happen the entire season, but let's say he goes down 3 or 4 weeks because Joe Milton is the number 2. How confident are you in his ability to steady the ship and keep the Cowboys afloat should a crisis occur?
Okay, well, I'll stop you there, but then I'm going to come back around and agree with you. A couple weeks ago, and we wrote about this over at RocketTapInsider.com. Well, like you said, I am from Dallas originally, so during especially these summer days, I do like to turn on some Dallas radio, 105.3 The Fan in specific, and they do have a reporter out there named Bobby Belt who does seem to have his ear to the ground when it comes to Dallas Cowboys football a lot. And again, this is in June, so there's a lot of things that have to go before the end of the season or the start of the season. But he said that if the Cowboys were playing a game today and Dak Prescott got hurt, he believed that it would be Will Grier who would go in as that backup quarterback as opposed to Joe Milton. That all being said, he said that the Cowboys' sort of hopes are that by the time that the season rolls around, it'll be Joe Milton after he does have the training camp and the preseason, all that sort of stuff, that he will be able to emerge. I think with Joe Milton, what was your question again? I want to get it right. Would you be confident in what he'd be able to do?
How confident would you be in his ability to steady the ship amidst a crisis?
I think that just the broad answer is that losing your quarterback in the NFL is such just a detrimental position to be in, and you are already in a tough spot to be. Can he go out there and make some flashy plays? We saw that in the final week against Buffalo last year with the Patriots. Now, what people would counter and say to that is, well, he was going up against the Buffalo Bills third-string players, and I don't think you're wrong there because the Buffalo Bills were getting ready for the playoffs. But look, can he outthrow George Pickens? Maybe not, right? Like George and CeeDee Lamb. Like, I think these are guys who can get so open or who can at least make the sort of catch in traffic, if you want to go with a Madden term, that you can play some good football with that. I do think that's where it is a little bit different than Tennessee. And that's not to say that you don't have better athletes on the other side of the football as well. You're going to have great cornerbacks. You're going to have great safeties that you got to get through. And you have NFL-type caliber linemen who are barreling down at you. Would I be confident that he'd be able to steady the ship? No. I think if you lose Dak Prescott, the season is in trouble. But am I confident that he'd maybe at least be able to make some fun football more than some other backups in the league? I'm pretty damn confident at least maybe he'd keep the games entertaining to a degree. But he is one of the interesting stories that I think it is funny though. Obviously, you guys know this well. The people who are watching this know this well. The media circus around Joe Milton in the preseason is unlike any other. We got to see it for up and close firsthand just a couple of years back. Even going back to that quarterback battle that we alluded to previously. Now I'm going through it all over again, but from the real outside perspective looking in, just seeing all these people love it, seeing all these people go crazy, seeing people react to the backflips, right? And going, this guy's amazing, give him the starting role. So
he's a great guy off the field too, Rick. He's a great guy off the field.
He was at the golf course with Dak Prescott. They looked like they were chopping it up and having a great time. So
enjoying them.
Am I confident that he could route the ship? No, that's kind of just the NFL though. But am I confident that he can maybe make it a little bit more entertaining than other guys? Yeah, I think that could be a little fun.
Man, you brought up another ghost from Tennessee past there. Actually,
Will Grier.
Will Grier. Yeah.
Two different.
I haven't heard that name in a minute.
Two different occasions.
I would love to know if they've talked about that. And obviously, they didn't cross paths or anything, but I'd love to know if they were on hole 12 of the Dallas Cowboys country club. If Joe Milton, I should have beat you guys, and Will Grier saying, but you didn't. I wonder if that's ever been brought up.
Remember when I threw that past Antonio Callaway and just stole the hearts of Tennessee fans? You remember when we charged at you on the first play of that West Virginia game in 2018 and started the Pruitt era off with on a horrible note. Not that that era was any good.
He could just ask Joe Milton about his own experience at the Swamp. It was not pretty. It did not end up well. If I remember correctly, there was a there was an interception that just made half of Knoxville pull their hair out.
You and I were both there.
The hair transplant surgeries, they got some good business that week.
Yeah, man, I remember that. That once I saw that
We were
Trevor
there
Etienne
together,
run, once I saw that Trevor Etienne run, I was just like, oh boy.
Man, I embarrassed myself when that Florida game went on because I was at Missouri during the time with my girlfriend, and it was our first time visiting. And we were going to Walmart that day, and I was wearing like my checkerboard pants and everything. I was just trying to show my Tennessee pride to all the people in Missouri.
Timothy Chalamet.
Yeah. But I was going there, and like someone like looked at me or whatever, and I was like, Tennessee's gonna beat Florida. Yeah, you guys watch. So like we're finally getting one in the swamp, and I hope that lady did not remember that, because that was not one of my best moments. Especially like I'm like everyone's looking at you when you're wearing the orange and white checkerboard pants. So I mean, especially out of state too. So not a good memory for me.
Hey, Rick, thanks for coming on tonight with us, man. We really appreciate it. Tell us what you guys got going on at Rocky Top Insider here in the next couple of weeks. I know fall camp is obviously quickly approaching.
Yeah, well, like you had alluded to at the beginning of the show, we sort of we're working on our monopoly of the Ryan S's here in Knoxville, bringing in Ryan Sylvia to our team. That's only made us bigger and better and badder. I mean, we've been producing so much more content than we were before. In all aspects of the place. We've got analytical pieces, we've got fun pieces, whatever you could look at. So I think the whole team is sort of locking down, about to prepare for training camp coming up next month. And I think that we're all really excited about it. So we're going to have everything that you could possibly hope for over on RockyTopInsider.com. But then in the social media world we live in today, we're going to have that buzzing as well. Just all sorts of news, press conference quotes, press conference videos, practice highlights, whatever you need. We're on every social media platform as well. So we added to our team here during the offseason. We're ready to go for the season coming up. And you can find us over on RockyTopInsider.com. But guys, thanks so much for having me on. Again, I've been a fan of the show. I enjoyed Ryan Shumpert's appearance a couple weeks back. And I hope, I sort of held my own like he did on this one. But I'm a big fan of both of you, a big fan of this show, and just privileged to be able to come on and talk a little shop with you guys, and I'd love to do it anytime you guys need. So it was a pleasure jumping on with you guys and hanging out for a bit tonight.
Well, thank you for coming. Yeah, thank you for coming on, Rick, and it was nice meeting you. And yeah, I mean, great show.
Yeah, well, you guys are phenomenal at what you do. So I won't, I'll keep being a listener, and it's good to watch you guys and follow you guys and what you do, but. Man, we all got a lot of stuff coming up here over the next month, and I can't wait to kind of pick y'all's brains about it as well, and it's going to be a fun time all around.
Rick, we'll do it again soon.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate y'all.
Rick Butler, one more time for all of you at home with us tonight, and what a great guy he is. Always great to talk with our friend, Mr. Fabulous Rick Butler. But we do need to do a little bit of a speed run here to end the show, because we do have several smaller stories that occurred over the course of the week. Thankfully, Rick already mentioned one of them with Zayden Anderson getting upgraded to a 4-star in the class, which is a help for this Tennessee football recruiting class. And one other thing that caught my eye last week, we talked about Faison Brandon losing his star according to On3. He is still the number 1 recruit in the country per 247. So if you're a Tennessee fan, definitely follow 247 if you want accurate recruiting. And that's all I'm going to say.
And I have for a long time. Like, I think I mentioned it last time on the show. Like, I've always liked 247 for their recruiting advice. Maybe it's because they rate Tennessee players higher. I don't know, but been following them all the way since like the Josh Dobb days. And yeah.
One other thing that we do need to mention in the world of recruiting before we transition to some other items here, and we'll see if this actually materializes into a commitment later on. But Marshall Manning has moved to Baylor School in Chattanooga. He is going there as a day student, and Jordan, is this a sign? Is it a sign that he is moving over? And that him moving over will bring him to the Vols here in the future? Well, is it possible?
I mean, it's definitely possible, and I don't know. I mean, you know as good as anyone, being like a Vols fan, like we tend to get our hopes up quite a bit. But I will say, I mean, I'm pretty sure he's grown up in like the Denver area, like his whole life. Um, I don't know, like him coming to East Tennessee, you know, like not too far from Knoxville. I mean, I don't want to get ahead of myself or anything, but of course, I feel like every Vols fan would love to see Marshall Manning come back. But like, you know, we saw Arch go in a different direction than his father and his uncle, the way that they went. And we saw Peyton Manning do that with Tennessee. And I don't know. I don't want to get heartbroken, but I mean, I feel like it's got to be a good sign, right?
Yeah, and there's a little bit of a Baylor pipeline going on too. I know Amari Jefferson's kind of indirect, but Gabriel Ascenda and Jamie Theodore both in this 2026 class for Tennessee. So you would think it's a good sign. And I've watched a little bit of his, I guess, middle school tape. Liked what I saw. How can you not? But you know, he's going to go up against bigger and better competition when he gets to Baylor. And Baylor really is trying to be the best of the best here in Tennessee. Them and Macaulay both doing a lot on the, I don't want to say high school football recruiting trail because that's what every college does, but they're recruiting kids from all over the country to come there is what I'm trying to say. And of course, Marshall Manning is one of them. So we'll see what happens with him. Does he want to go to Tennessee and have all the hype around him? We will find out here in a few years. He's a class of 2028 kid, so we got a little ways to go with Marshall Manning. To the NFL we go now. A couple of notes here this week. Some pretty big news, actually. The Kansas City Chiefs have signed a deal with Trey Smith, a former Tennessee guard, that is for 4 years for $94 million, $70 million guaranteed. And this is a remarkable story for Trey Smith. Because there's a couple reasons. One, he obviously did not see the field as much as he would have liked at Tennessee. Obviously dealt with a lot of scary medical situations here. One in particular involving the blood clots in his lungs. And of course that did not look good to NFL teams. They didn't want to take the risk. So he fell all the way to the 7th round in 2021. And then two, you know, just from an era of Tennessee football that was at its absolute worst. You know, thank goodness the transfer portal was not utilized the way it is today, because he would have been off and running after the 2017 season and you would not remember him as a Vol. But of course he stayed around and played through the Jeremy Pruitt years. But it's really been fun to watch him transform into a guy that was maybe a little too slept on in college, and he's really become the best guard in football now. There's no other way to say it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a great story because, I mean, you mentioned his medical issues that he's had to overcome and everything. And I mean, I think a lot of people were doubtful during the time, and hence the reason why he fell in the draft. But I mean, if there's any guy that you really want to see be able to find success in the NFL and some guy to root for, I mean, it is Trey Smith. I mean, he's a Tennessee guy through and through. I'm pretty sure he won Mr. Football in high school in Tennessee. And then, you know, he never quit. He never gave up. He stayed on the team. And, you know, he's just fought his way to playing for the Kansas City Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes. And now he's the highest paid guard in NFL history. I mean, there's just so much to love about him. And not even to mention, too, how he quoted Peyton Manning when he decided that he was going to stay for senior year, which I thought was really cool at the time. So it's great seeing a true Vol for life get a payday and everything. And, man, the amount of money that's being thrown around these days, because I was telling my brother, like literally like the other day, I was talking about, I was like, these quarterbacks and stuff, they're getting paid so much. I mean, I remember Peyton Manning was making like $27 million a year. And now that's on the lower end.
Inflation.
Yeah. I mean, it's just insane the amount of money going around. And you said 70 million guaranteed. I mean, he's going to have a nice life with that money. That's for sure. Regardless of how his NFL career finishes out.
So one Vol got a payday in the NFL this past week, and that's good for him. Another one is searching for one, and that is another guy from that same era of Tennessee football. Jawan Jennings is having some contract disputes with the San Francisco 49ers. And it's kind of funny to me that they're having disputes here because he's kind of become by default the best receiver on that team with Deebo Samuel going elsewhere, and then of course Brandon Ayuk's injuries. So everybody's looking at him now to do the job there, and he's done a good job in San Francisco. I feel like he's a guy that, like Trey Smith, went late in the drafts, but has really proven his worth just not only as a wide receiver, but as a blocker. That's one of his more endearing traits as a wide receiver. And that's a guy you would like to keep around as an NFL organization. So I am a little bit puzzled as to what the 49ers are doing here. But basically, it sounds like either it's give me a new deal or I'm going to go look for something else.
Well, I mean, I'll say from his time when he was playing at Tennessee, I mean, he was always a workhorse, and he sure seemed like a great leader that Tennessee had. I mean, I'm not sure how much of a presence he has in the 49ers locker room, but I mean, he was always a dog at Tennessee, always giving his all. Like they slapped the sign before going into kneeling every day. Like, I'm going to give my all for Tennessee today. I mean, he embodied that. He embodied that whenever he played at Tennessee. I mean, he's a good player. I mean, you mentioned his blocking. I mean, his contested catching, and not to mention too, a couple. I mean, when he was in the Super Bowl with the 49ers, I mean, if the 49ers were to win that game, he would have been your Super Bowl MVP. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't fault him for wanting more money. I mean, and he was essentially wide receiver one last year. I mean, he almost cracked 1,000 yards. He got 6 touchdowns, but I mean, his presence is still strong outside of catching the football. Like you mentioned, the blocking and all that. So, I mean, I don't blame him for thinking that he needs more money and everything like that. And I mean, it's honestly too, with the way 49ers have been, I'm like, are they ever going to get over the hump? I'm like, yeah, they're always there knocking on the front door to get it. Like, they put themselves in position to win a Super Bowl, but man, they haven't walked away from it. I think they've lost their past 3 Super Bowls. And I know like the one of them's from a while ago, but I mean, still, like, the 49ers haven't seemingly been able to get over the hump. And if he's wanting to win a Super Bowl and everything, I mean, I know they're a pretty good team, but they haven't got over the hump yet. So, I mean, I don't fault him at all for the contract issues. And hopefully he does get a good deal, whether it's with the 49ers or not.
Yeah. So you've had 3 lost Super Bowls for the 49ers in the last 15 years. Of course, the one where the lights went out in New Orleans against the Ravens. And then you had the other 2 to the Chiefs. So no wins this century in the Super Bowl for the San Francisco 49ers. I don't know if that's what's really playing a factor in the decision, but it just feels like that is an offense that is full of injury-prone guys. Christian McCaffrey, for the first couple of years he's there, it was just like, all right, when is it going to happen? When is he going to get injured? And it finally did in 2024. Brandon Ayuk blows out his ACL. He's not the same guy. They're having contract disputes. So you got problems there. Deebo Samuel gets shipped off to Washington. So yeah, you've had all kinds of injury problems there, and it feels like you need all the depth you can get. And especially now with a couple of those guys not being there anymore, it's just like, why not pay the guy? But we'll see what comes of it. It may be a whole lot of nothing for right now, but yeah. That's what I've got on the Vols in the NFL. No other important notes there. One final thing to end the show, and I appreciate all you guys being on with us again tonight, even if we are running a little bit over. But it was announced earlier today that Tennessee will play Tennessee State for the first time ever in 2027. And I don't know this for sure. In the comments, feel free to fact check me if you would like. But I looked it up on a trustworthy football database, and I actually don't think Tennessee has ever played an HBCU in football. Again, I could be wrong, but I was just scrolling through the teams that Tennessee has played games against, and I did not see one on there that I recognized as an HBCU. So I believe this is a first. Again, I could be wrong. Feel free to fact check me. The other detail about this game, it is supposed to be played in Neyland Stadium. However, TSU officials are working to move that game to Nissan Stadium, the new one that is, when it opens in 2027, as kind of like a celebratory thing. Jordan, your initial thoughts on Tennessee's first ever matchup with TSU coming up in 2 years?
Well, first of all, you mentioned that about the HBCUs. I'm actually not aware of that because I've deep dived into Tennessee's past games before, and I don't know how far you've gotten into it, but I mean Tennessee's even played against NBA. Like, which if anybody is not familiar in the comments, that's Montgomery Bell Academy, which is a high school in Tennessee. So Tennessee has played against a high school football team, and that is on their like record there. So it's kind of crazy to think that Tennessee's never played against an HBCU. But I mean, I kind of like the idea of new Nissan Stadium. I mean, I think that would be a cool way to advertise the new stadium for Titans fans out there and everything, like get a first look at it. And then plus, like, I live in the Nashville area, of course. So, I mean, it'd be nice. It's just a short drive to go see the game. But I'm excited about the matchup too. I mean, TSU's always had a great band. That's one thing that I've always heard. And, Tennessee fans love Pride of the Southland. So, I mean, I think that there'll be probably some cool interactions there as well. And like, Eddie George being the head coach.
Nope.
He's not.
He's at Bowling Green now.
I forgot about that.
I looked it up today. Reggie Barlow is the name of their new coach.
Well, never mind. I was going to say Eddie George, I guess, is looking to go 0-2 against Tennessee in his career, but I guess I forgot about Bowling Green State. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I'm excited for the game. And if it's in Nissan Stadium, cool. If it's in Knoxville, cool. I mean, it's still a game that I would like to tune into. And I mean, I think there could be a lot of cool interactions that come out of it.
All right. I'm going to be a little bit of a negative Nancy with this here, Jordan. Sorry to ruin your fun. But first and foremost, and I don't say this to be, just degrading or whatever, but I don't really get excited for games that are scheduled against FCS opponents. I feel like the way college football is moving, they're kind of trying to push those games out, which is a shame because these teams, especially TSU, they do need the money because there was a report somewhere, I think earlier this year, that TSU was in danger of potentially shutting down if it did not get more funds. And credit to their football program. They're making a concerted effort to go out and schedule these SEC teams. They've got a meeting against Vandy and I believe another one against Georgia scheduled in the next 5 years. So good on them for doing that. But I think no matter where you play that game, I don't think you're going to have fans that are super happy for that. Number one, it's a game Tennessee should win easily, right? And then number two, you play that game in Nashville, maybe there's some excitement to see the new stadium. Tennessee fans are going to show up regardless, but you just don't have the same level of excitement in a place that is a neutral venue as opposed to a home venue. I feel like that may be something that I think is a bit of a turnoff for people. But I do think it is cool that they have finally decided to play each other because Tennessee likes to spread its money to more local FCS teams. For the most part, they are within the state borders. Teams like Tennessee Tech, ETSU, Austin Peay, UT Martin occasionally, a little bit more of a commute to get from Knoxville to there. Western Carolina is right across the border, so they play them every now and again. The most random one I could think of is Indiana State back in 2017. I don't know why they had that one on the schedule, but
Larry Bird's alma mater.
Yeah, Larry Bird's alma mater. Tennessee won that game, 42-7 that year, second game of the year. And I remember it was just like, there was a situation with Jarrett Garantano where he was threatening to transfer, and it was like, if you don't play him in this game, we're going to be really upset. So they played him in the game, and Butch let him get in, and that's one of the few decent moments from that season, I guess, just in terms of wins and losses. But no, I am glad to see Tennessee finally get Tennessee State on the schedule. But at the same time, if they move the game to Nissan Stadium, I think there's going to be even less excitement among Tennessee fans for that game.
Yeah, I mean, and I see where you're coming from, and I know like the SEC is talking about changing up the matchups, like adding a like ninth game in there and whatnot. But I mean, but Tennessee's been playing against like FCS teams like every year. I'm just excited that it's someone new, that it's not Austin P, that it's not Chattanooga or something like that. I mean, I think it's a nice change of pace. I mean, of course, like Tennessee's presumably going to win comfortably. And, there's not a lot of excitement there in terms of it being a close game. And it's not really going to mean much unless you lose in terms of like going to the playoffs or anything like that. I mean, I guess you only have stuff to lose, like when you play an FCS team. I mean, not saying Tennessee's actually going to lose because, of course, I don't think that they are. But I mean, I don't know. It's just interesting to see Tennessee play against a new team again. And honestly, me being an MTSU alum, I'm just waiting for the time that Tennessee and MTSU play each other again. And of course, I know like MTSU is not an FCS team, but it would be nice because I think the last time that they played was
2011.
2011. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I think Dwight Dasher from MTSU was the quarterback during that time, if I'm not mistaken. So I mean, I would love to see that matchup. Especially if it was at MTSU Stadium too, which would be interesting because I actually missed the Vanderbilt game that they had my freshman year of college. They played against Vanderbilt and they, of course, lost. But, cool for TSU getting to play against Tennessee and everything. I guess we'll just wait and see how it goes.
All right, Jordan, that's about all I got tonight. Anything else we missed that you can think of?
Actually, there might be one thing. Let me check here because I thought I had something. Well, I mean, I'm sure that. Well, oh yeah, we forgot to mention about the preseason All SEC members
Oh,
today.
yeah.
Yeah,
I
so
didn't forget that.
Jerrod McCoy, first team All
No
SEC.
surprise.
Yeah, no surprise at all. I mean, assuming that he's going to be healthy for most of the year and stuff. I mean, no surprise at all. Um, both the Carters got in. Arian Carter, who we spoke about a lot today. He's a third team, and then like Boo Carter as well. So I mean, it's pretty interesting. I thought that there might be more than that. Like, do you think that they left anybody off?
Maybe Sam Pendleton. That's my only guess. I mean, the defensive line is good. Maybe Josh Josephs. That's one that came to mind. But the defensive line, like, we know they're going to be good. I just don't think we've seen as much from them as some of the other defensive linemen around the conference, which is okay. I get that to an extent, but I do still think this defensive line is going to be very good in 2025. But offensively, I'm not going to levy any kind of big argument against you if you try to leave Tennessee players out just because there's a lot of unknowns there, which is okay.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the reason why there weren't more Tennessee players on there. I mean, I think Pendleton could have a really great season with the Volunteers, and Joshua Josephs, he's someone that I've been high on for a minute now, and I expect him to really break out. But I mean, there's not really been enough to like necessarily put him in the All SEC conversation. So, but I'm sure it's not going to be that way towards the end of the year. I expect Tennessee, when it's all said and done, to have more than 3 All SEC players and hopefully an All American in Jerrod McCoy. But I guess we'll just have to wait to see.
All right. Well, that is going to do it for us tonight on Tennessee at the Voice of College Football here on Tennessee Volunteers Live. If you're new to the show, please like, share, and subscribe to Tennessee at the Voice of College Football on YouTube. Again, it helps us out. It helps you out as well, gets you closer to all the great content that you enjoy surrounding Tennessee football. For Jordan Binkley, I am Tucker Harlan. We will talk to you guys again next week.